I'd like to call this meeting of the Lammersville Unified Board of Education to order at 7 o'clock. Would everyone please turn off or silence your cell phones? The meeting is being recorded and live streamed. And if I could get everyone to stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance at this time. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
They moved the flag on me, I had to find it. Roll call, please.
Here.
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 Absent.
Approval and/or corrections of the agenda.
Yes, we have one correction. We're removing the budget revisions from agenda item 8C. We're only approving warrants this evening.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Having a first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. Item 4, recognition, certificate of recognition for CSBA Director Balzerini, presented by Steve Reed, California School Boards Association.
Thank you. Board Member Pombo, board members, Superintendent Nicholas. Yeah, my name is Steve Reed, and I am the Public Affairs and Community Engagement Representative for CSBA, the California School Boards Association. And Matthew Balzerini is the Director of Region 8, which covers 6 counties: San Joaquin, Stanislaus, Merced, Amador, Calaveras, and Tuolumne. And Matt and I have known each other for many years, and I've always admired Matt's leadership in the education community, and as someone who's not afraid to speak truth to power. And so I value that. He's been a wonderful Region 8 director, and he, in my role as PACER, one of my jobs is to set up meetings with legislative staff members and legislators at the state and federal level. And Matt has been involved and led all of those meetings. And so in recognition of his leadership, I have certificates of recognition from a number of our elected officials here. So I'm not going to read every one, but I like what Congressman McNerney's certificate of recognition says. It says, certificate of special congressional recognition presented to Matthew Balzerini in recognition of your many years of service on the Lammersville Unified School District Board. And as director of the California School Boards Association Region 8, I applaud your commitment to the education and success of our community. So in addition to Congressman McNerney, I also have certificates from Congressman Harder, Assemblymember Flora, and in a joint resolution from Assemblymember Eggman and Senator Kathleen Galgiani, Senator Borges, and Assemblymember Adam Gray. So Matt, it has been a pleasure working with you, and I know you have great things in store for your future, and I look forward to working with you in whatever capacity that takes. So thank you. And we also have CSBA delegate Paul Wallace here from Newman Crow's Landing, who's also a delegate.
Thank you for the chance. I know this is Matthew's last night, and I know that Lammerville's been really well served by the work that Matt's done. He's been a real guide to folks like me that have come along behind him, and a lot of work behind the scenes. I've been fortunate enough to attend some of these meetings, and I know that he always had Lammersville at the front of his mind, but he really did a lot of work, and he was really guided by a passion that when he saw something that was unfair, that wasn't right, that wasn't what was in the best interest of everybody statewide, he wasn't afraid to step up and say that's not right. And then be there the next week when there was a committee meeting to how should we do it better. And I know that he gave up a lot of family and leisure time to do that. So kind of a retirement for you, and I hope you get out and fish or golf or whatever you're going to do. But we sure appreciate the work that you've done along the way, and I know that Lammerville's really benefited from the work that he's done on the statewide basis. So congratulations on what should be a retirement and a ride off into the sunset, and you should feel good about what you've done. Thank you.
Trustee Balzarino, we have a couple more acknowledgements here. It's always difficult to congratulate someone who's younger than you into retirement, but it's my honor to be able to offer a recognition from our school district for Trustee Balzarini and his legacy of leadership here. As I understand it, Mr. Balzarini has been a member of the community of Mountain House for approximately 16 years. He has a career in public service that includes being a police officer, and he's currently a lieutenant in San Francisco Fire. And as a fearless advocate for the Lammersville Unified School District, he has a long history of being part of the growing pains and growing victories of our great district. Trustee Balzarini served as one of the trustee members of the Lammersville Elementary Governing Board from 2006 and 2008. He has served as a trustee member of the inaugural Lammersville Unified School Board from 2010 to 2020, 10 years. He's been a CSBA delegate assembly member through the California School Boards Association from 2011 to 2015, and has, in the last 5 years, has been a regional director, as Mr. Reed pointed out, for Region 8. Also, some of his great victories. If those of you that know Trustee Balzarini knows that when the fearless advocacy part of his personality kicks in, it comes with some heat and passion. He was one of the team members, along with former Superintendent Dale Hansen and others, who took on a massive corporation, one of the largest corporations in the state of California, twisted their arms, gave a couple of headbutts, and because of that effort, led to the original funding source doubling for Mountain House High School. As a public servant in the career safety field, he is a very driving force behind our safety committee, and also a visionary to kind of right a wrong on facilities use in this community. I could say from my living it with him, it was a pet peeve that we have the best facilities in the state of California, and we're going to take dang good care of them. And served on the inaugural facilities committee and established our manual, which to this day raises money for our school district and keeps our facilities beautiful. So on behalf of your staff and the board members here, we have a plaque that we hope will hang in your office, which I'm sure you have plenty of time to clean up now. And so I'd like to present that to you.
Well, Matt, I would just like to say that it has been my honor and privilege to serve on this board with you for the last 10 years. We've been through a lot of battles, my friend, and most of the time we were on the same side. And on behalf of the board, thank you for all you've done for this district, this community, and for Region 8 through CSBA. You put a lot of yourself into it, and you're going to be hard to replace here and there.
Thank you. I'm a little overwhelmed. I'm very appreciative. When I do something, I go all in, and I can honestly say that I worked hard. I worked hard for education. I worked hard for this board and advocating at the state level. A lot of successes, couple of failures, but a lot of successes, and made some really great friendships along the way. Paul, thank you very much for coming all the way out. Steve, same for you. I really appreciate it. I got to say, Kurt, really enjoyed working with you. I really appreciate it. Thor, thank you for all your guidance. The safety committee, we started that years ago, and it never got traction until you came on board. So thank you. Really appreciate it. And although she's not here, I do have to thank my wife, Noelle. It's funny, our politics are not the same. So as I'm arguing one side, she's on the other side going, what are you doing? Love her to death, and I know it's got to be hard for her working for the district and me on the board, so I do appreciate her patience with that. Love Mountain House, and I will continue to be involved. I'm just going to focus on a few other things right now, so thank you very much for this.
Moving on to item 5, committee reports. District Advisory Committee, Trustee Lampel.
Nothing to report.
District English Language Advisory Committee, Trustee Bonilla.
Yes, I, along with Trustee Clements, attended the DLAC Committee virtual meeting on October 22nd, and the Director of Student Services, Irene Bustillo, presented a very good presentation to families, and it was very well attended. So thank you very much, and that's all.
Thank you. Education Committee, we met virtually last night and had a couple of very interesting presentations, one by Assistant Superintendent Heather Sherburne and another by Director of Special Ed, John Saylor. Drew a blank there, sorry about that. But it was a very informational and enjoyable meeting. I think we got a lot of information on what is happening in the district during these trying times. And anything to add, Trustee Balzerini?
You got it.
Thank you. Moving on to Facilities Committee, Trustee Clements.
Yes, our next meeting is on December 17th at 6:30. And I apologize, I meant to ask district staff to do this. Could you reach out to the members of the committee and ask them for preference on virtual versus before the next board meeting? So if it is going to be live, we can announce it at the next board meeting. Nothing else to report, sir.
Thank you. Item E, Policy Committee, Trustee Bonilla.
Yes, Trustee Clements and I just finished reviewing a batch of policies, and they should be coming forward to the board, and I believe there are some here tonight for us to review. That's all.
Thank you. Safety Committee, Trustee Balzerini.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. And the Wellness Committee, there's also nothing to report. Moving on to item 6, Governing Board Reports. Trustee Bonilla.
Other than attending the DLAC Committee, I have nothing to report.
Thank you. Trustee Balzerini.
Just some CSBA business to report. We met virtually today with all the region, and a lot of school districts are going back. A couple school districts have had a few positive cases, but they're responding appropriately. And we'll continue to meet every couple weeks. I'll give you the updates as long as I'm still with CSBA. And guys, I appreciate you guys being here, but you don't stay for the whole meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Balzerini. Trustee Lampel.
So I would also like to jump on the bandwagon of thanking Trustee/Director Balzerini. When I came on the board, I had the education background end and giving information to the board, but I'd like to thank Matt for showing me the ropes of this side of the table, and actually both of these guys took me under their wing, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate the spirited conversations about issues. I appreciate honesty, so I don't expect people to always agree with me. And last night, I watched most of the Education Committee just to kind of keep up on what was going on. That's it.
Thank you. Trustee Clements.
As Trustee Bonilla mentioned, I did attend the DLAC committee meeting recently, and I would also echo everyone else's comments in thanking Trustee Balzerini for all of his hard work for the district over like you first got on the elementary school board like 14 years ago, right? Something like that?
I did a little stint over CSD.
Yeah, I remember that too. Yeah. Thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to say I do remember the very first meeting before Wickland was built, when you and your wife were there with Mr. Lebo. And from that day when I met you, you've been involved in some way, shape, or form in our community, and I do thank you for your service. It's been, tireless, I can tell, and hard work on your part, so thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Nothing else to report, Mr.
Thank you. And other than the aforementioned Education Committee meeting, I have nothing else to report. Receiving of public comments. The board shall give members of the public an opportunity to address the board either before or during the board's consideration of each agenda item. At a time so designated on the agenda, members of the public may also bring before the board matters that are not listed on the agenda of a regular meeting. The board may refer such a matter to the superintendent or designee or take it under advisement, but shall not take action at that time. The board may place the matter on the agenda of a subsequent meeting for discussion or action. Individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item. The board shall limit total time for public input to 20 minutes. And we will continue, at least for the foreseeable future, to offer public comments which may be accessed through a link on each agenda prior to the meeting. Superintendent Nicholas, are there any public comments?
Yes, we have 3. Arenda de la Cruz, being that San Joe Co. is in the red tier for the governor's guidelines for reopening, are you changing/pushing out the dates the children to return in person instruction? Sanjay Sharma, good evening, Board President, other board members, and Dr. Nicholas. According to the district's high school education plan in the last meeting, students will meet their teachers only once only for each subject during the week for on-campus instruction starting January 4. Though they will go twice to the school because of cohort groups, they would meet with their teachers for periods 1 through 4 on either Monday or Tuesday, and for periods 5 to 7, they would meet teachers either Thursday or Friday. This is still meeting each teacher once for each subject. The teacher's instructional time will be significantly down from the current hybrid level. Teachers used to meet 5 days a week, traditional system, no COVID. Then it was changed to twice a week in the current hybrid distance learning plan. And now it will be just once a week when students would meet the teachers for on-campus instruction in January. The second point is that you cannot make up the lost instructional time by adding success time. Success is only an hour a day in the high school schedule except Wednesdays. There have to be some creative ways by which the school/district adds more instructional time for the student. Otherwise, students will be quite stressed as their homework will remain the same, but instructional time will significantly decrease. There are many ways to do this. Here are a few of them. Number 1, provide professional training to teachers. Many teachers are still not creating recorded lecture videos, and they just assign homework. Teachers should send these recorded lectures on the days and they do not meet the students. 2, add virtual Zoom sessions on the days when they do not meet the students. During these sessions, teachers can go over concepts and essential work related to homework. 3, Wednesday is reserved for all success. Why would we need a full day of success on Wednesday? But instead of all-day success, half a day can be used for Zoom sessions for teaching, which would benefit all the students. Not all the teachers are available each day during success, and not many students can even make it to success even if they want to, due to the limited availability of some teachers. Therefore, I request To add this point to your agenda today or for the next meeting for discussion, the district needs to develop a better education plan for high school and address how they will cover valuable instruction time loss under the new plan. Praveen Valdanada, flexibility to switch from online to in-person once COVID situation improves can greatly help. Please also elaborate measures taken to protect staff and students once classes resume in person. Mr. President, that's it.
Thank you, and I trust that district staff has either already reached out to these people or will in the near future. Thank you. Consent items for consideration. Governing Board meeting minutes, regular meeting of October 21st, contracts under $50,000, ratification of budget revision and warrants, list from, I apologize, is that what we had pulled?
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. So it's
Part
the
of it.
warrant list sans the budget revision.
All right. Ratification of new hires, ratification of resignations, updated 2020-2021 fundraisers. Other than the aforementioned, is there anything else any of the board members would like to pull for further discussion?
I'll move for approval of consent items with the amendment of item C, which is ratification of the warrant list only.
Second.
Having a first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
If I may.
You may.
Thank you. We would like to welcome the following new employees to our Lammersville team. Ashley Daniker, the food service lead, and Jocelyn Salas, high school clerk. Welcome to Mountain House, Lammersville.
Welcome. Item 9, district administrative reports. Superintendent's report. Dr. Nicholas?
Yes, first of all, I'd just like to point out and acknowledge James LeGrand. He is the master crafts person who put together these fine barriers. He made them at home in his garage and with his own table saw and 45-degree blade saw. And then after making the first one, was put through the test of are we going to stain them or paint them? And so the decision to go black was the right call, but we want to thank him for his good work. And then second, we have just a couple of shots of our transitional kindergarten and kindergarten kids who are here on campus this week in their first hybrid setup. It's gone very smoothly. We want to thank the teachers, the parents, and the principals and their admin teams and these cute little critters. So this is how we welcomed them back with signs and all kinds of ways to help them manage safety expectations. This is one of our classrooms. You can see the barriers we brought in and the little people learning.
It's good. I got it.
And that is our exit and entrance, beautifully taped arrows, and then a cute young lady. And again, another shot with our youngsters, and they're doing a good job with the masks and the barriers. And according to all, the teachers are really, you could just, the vibe about being around their kids again, and the kids are excited to be back. So it was a good decision, and our kids are doing well, and as well as our staff. And then a little Cougar Pride over there at Cuesta. And that is it. So we thought we'd just share that with you. And Mr. President, that is my superintendent's report.
Quick question. Do we think most of the youngsters are wearing masks?
I would say 100%.
Awesome. Thank you.
Very good. Item B, enrollment report. Dr. Nicholas?
Our enrollment is presently 6,411.
Thank you. Item C, district maintenance and operations, and I'm guessing that Associate Superintendent Harrison is taking that.
Board President Pombo, trustees,
Welcome.
It's great to see you all again. I am again representing James LeGrand. The custodial staff is working on daily cleaning and sanitization of the schools and stocking PPE supplies. With the TKK students returning yesterday, they are focused on daily cleaning and sanitizing areas that are used on a daily basis. The operations staff is working on delivery of PPE to sites as requested and needed by school sites. They delivered tubs of wipes to the first and second grade classrooms, which are beginning on Monday. They're also working on the baseball field and the softball fields, getting them ready for the season. They're working on the garden at Mountain House High School and at Lammersville School. The maintenance staff is working on work orders. They spent a considerable amount of time at Mountain House High School repairing the cracked asphalt on the east side of the football field. They did a great job repairing that area and repairing the vandalized gates at Wickland Elementary School. We've got the materials in and now those gates are repaired. The theater lobby at Mountain House High School was used as a polling place for the election over the weekend, and through, obviously, yesterday. The event went smoothly. We had no incidents to report. They treated our facility well. It went well. James had meetings with the new HVAC company on Thursday and Wednesday of this week. The purpose of both meetings was to make sure that the district is doing everything possible to provide safe indoor learning environments for our students and staff. Per their recommendation, we are now running the fans 24/7 in all occupied classrooms to help vent the space overnight. Changes to the fan schedules were made to the TKK classrooms, which started yesterday. Those were made late last week. And they will make the same changes to the fan schedule later this week to the first and second grade classrooms that are starting on Monday. And then they'll do the same when the third and fifth come back on November 30th. That is Mr. LeGrand's report. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 10, action item. Consider approval of 2020-2021 intra-district transfer requests.
Move to approve 2020-2021 inter and intra-district transfer requests.
Second.
Having a first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, approval of 2020-2021 contract with non-public agencies for 3 licensed vocational nurses not to exceed $116,437.50. Staff report?
Simply put, we recommend approval of this item. We were able to take what we had budgeted with 4 positions and expand it to 5 to make sure we have all the coverage we need.
Questions or comments by the board?
I'll move for approval of 2020-2021 contracts with non-public agencies for 3 licensed vocational nurse services not to exceed $116,437.50. Those contracts are with ProCare Therapy and the Stepping Stones Group.
Second.
Having a first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 11, discussion items. First reading of updated board policies and administrative regulations. Staff report?
This item's here for staff input from the board. If not, we will bring it back to the next meeting for a second read and approval.
Questions or comments by the board?
I'll just thank the committee for the preview.
Indeed, thank you, and for the work that went into the preview and reviewing the policies. Thank you. Item B, student services presentation, update on services offered and provided. Staff report?
Yes, my pleasure to introduce Director Busatil, who's going to give a presentation. We spent a lot of time in the last few meetings talking about our instructional program and schedules, but it's also Director Busatil's role to make sure that the social emotional needs of our families and kids are taken and staff are taken care of. So here's a little bit of what she provides for all of our community.
All right, good evening, President Pombo, trustees, Dr. Nicholas. Thank you for having me. So Student Services oversees a wide range of areas from health to student discipline to taking care of our homeless and foster youth, our English learners, safety, and of course attendance. So with that, our staff has been very busy. Our Student Services Counselor, Kathy Coyle-Euchre, has been meeting with students continuously through her one-to-one sessions. She's not hosting small group sessions right now, it's all one-to-one. With that, she's had 15 new referrals, and on an average day, she's checking in with 55 students through virtual check-ins, whether it's an email or through a Google form, just making sure that our students are feeling healthy, mentally, physically, and that they're feeling supported throughout the school year. She also participated in the Living Works suicide prevention and is already using some of that with our students that are feeling a little bit vulnerable right now, as we know that mental health is an area of concern for not just adults, but our students as well. Looking into support, we already had a mental wellness brochure for our families, our students, but she went ahead and developed one for our staff members as well to make sure that we are meeting their needs with resources that are specific to our staff. Again, partnering with the counselors at Mountain House High School and other site administration, our school psychologists, to make sure that we have a smooth, seamless support system for our students. Again, our foster and homeless youth, making sure that we're reaching out to those families and providing support, whether through technology support, additional one-to-one sessions, whatever that might be. She's kind of the liaison for some of our families that feel very, very comfortable with her. And then looking ahead, she did receive her parent project certification. So previously, when our students would go through the SARB hearings, one of the outcomes might be to participate in parenting courses. And up until now, we are only able to refer them out. And so one of our goals for our department was to make sure that we were bringing as many resources into our community as possible, and the parent project is one of those. So she is developing a series of classes that we'll be able to offer here with our staff to our parents. Again, the TP planning is going in for Mountain House High School to start launching that for starting with our freshman students in their advisory period. And then, of course, she participates in the Wellness Committee and then her own education and making sure that she's keeping awareness through like the Anti-Racism Summit and other professional development opportunities. In addition to our student services counselor, we have Amy Isler, our district nurse, as well as our current 2 LVNs, and we'll be expanding that team. They do a wide range of things, but right now, as we're preparing to transition not just our SDC students and our TK Kinder students, but more and more students as our rollout continues, their focus was making sure that our student safety, our staff safety, that we have our isolation rooms well set up, established, communicating with staff and parents as needed, our students. Also with that is the communication and the support through the development of the nurse notes. So that goes out with the schools in their bulletins, the teacher resource guide. So with the transition, we want to make sure that we are minimizing traffic, if you will, in our front offices. So she did develop a resource guide for our teachers and staff members of when to send students up to the front office and when to take care of those things in the classroom. So Band-Aids and things like that can be easily given on the playground and in the classroom, and we want to make sure that we're minimizing that traffic up in the office because most of them are, fairly small and there's not a lot of space for additional people to be in there. It's still attending the IEP and 504 meetings. There's a lot of parents just want reassurance to make sure that not just their IEP goals or their 504 supports are in place, but just in general, what is it going to look like for when my student returns back to campus? And so everything has been restarted well before our students came back on campus, and they're continuing to monitor that. Another thing that also went into effect is many of our families leading up to the start of school in August, they weren't able to get immunizations. So a big part of our follow-up prior to the hybrid starting was reminding families that for students to return to campus, they had to be up to date with all of their current immunizations by their age or grade level. We also have hosted a number of our CPR trainings. They are much smaller than we would normally host. They're limited to 5 participants, but we're making sure that we're doing everything we can to support our students by making sure that our staff is trained as well in any safety measures that we need. All right, so we have a couple of different scenarios that I'm going to present. So on the left side, you see a portion of our referral form that our nurses will be using. So in this scenario, it's 9 a.m. on a Thursday, and a student presents with symptoms in the classroom, 2 or more symptoms from column B. And so the student has a runny nose, his tummy's not feeling quite right, and the student has a headache. The teacher recognizes the student's not feeling well and calls the front office. From there, the student is escorted up to the office and placed in the established isolation room, and the school nurse or the LVN is able to kind of go through and double check for temperature, oxygen concentration, and heart rate. So we have all of that equipment already in our nurses' stations, whether it is the direct nurse station or the isolation room. So we have both rooms are set up. The parent is contacted to pick the student up. And upon picking up the student, the parent also reports that recently the student had had an ear infection, but they thought that they were doing better. The nurse communicates to the parent what are the return to school criteria. And so for us, the return to school criteria based off of guidance that we have received from the County Department of Public Health is going to make sure that the student does not have a fever, and that is no fever without a fever-reducing medication, and a COVID test, a note from the doctor, or the absence of symptoms. And so one thing that would be different is before, when kids were out sick, they would just come to school and that would be that. The other part of the communication that is going to parents would be that they have to check into the office upon their return from being out sick or being sent home, so that we can verify that there is an absence of symptoms for our student, just as another layer of protection to our staff and our families. And then the other thing that would be, this is a snippet of a much larger form. These forms will be sent to my office with acknowledgement from the school nurse, the information that was communicated, and then signed by the site administrator and sent to me right away. Very similar to how we process our accident reports, with the exception is right now our accident reports usually come in at the end of the day. These would come in as they're happening in case we needed to start contact tracing right away. All right, scenario 2. So a parent calls, it's a Monday, 11 a.m., and a parent calls to report that their child has tested positive. They just found out that their child is COVID positive. The student is not currently on campus. However, the student was on campus the Monday and Tuesday of the week prior. The student also has a sibling. So right away, the principal calls the district office and put into action their COVID response team. And so there are a list of questions that the principal has to be prepared with, so that when the district office then calls the County Department of Public Health, they have all the answers ready. And so that's going to be the name, the date of birth, address, telephone number, when did the symptoms arise, when were they last on campus, those types of questions. And so the students in the impacted class stayed for the remainder of the school day, but were sent home with items to transition to distance learning. And so because their school day was modified, they decided to go ahead and have them shelter in place on the school site, and then make sure that the transition to distance learning would be as seamless as possible, and that everyone would have what they needed and the kids were in a structured environment. From there, communication is sent home with students and also emailed, because I think we've all had experiences when the things don't come out of the students' bags, or vice versa. Sometimes emails are not checked, so just as another layer. While only one school site was impacted and one classroom was impacted, that one classroom was shut down, the information is shared with all of the remaining site administration, so that when they start receiving phone calls from out in the community, they're able to answer it knowledgeably and add that other layer of support to families, because if in the absence of information, sometimes fear can kind of grow and develop. And so making sure that everyone has consistent information to share with community members, families, students, then they're able to make sure that they have a nice, smooth transition. The County Department for Public Health does provide the guidelines of the quarantine and or isolation for the impacted groups. In this particular case, the siblings class was not closed down. However, the sibling was told to quarantine at home as well. All right, and then our third scenario would be with a staff member. So it's Tuesday, 9:30 a.m. I'm not sure if you have experienced this, but staff members come up to the office and like, man, head is killing me. Does anyone have some Advil? I used to have some, it's just not there anymore. And so the staff member goes on to describe that their headache is really bad. It's just been persistent for a few days. And if you're kind of thinking through the COVID symptoms, that is a little bit of a concern. And also complains that the stomach's not been right, a little nauseous since attending his cousin's wedding. So again, similar to the student, the staff member will be placed in isolation, temperature, blood oxygen level, heart rate, all checked. And then the staff member would be sent home. Human resources would also be part of this. The staff member would be recommended to go have a COVID test. Good news in this scenario is the staff member reports that the COVID test was negative. However, in abundance of caution and per guidance from the County Department of Public Health, the staff member is told to continue the quarantine for 14 days. It is recommended in this situation, this would be communicated to the staff member, that testing is not immediately after, but 5 to 7 days after the potential exposure. And then if the staff member had been positive, then that would be another set of protocols, and we would have to do the specific contact tracing for that staff member and who they had been in contact with. One of the most important things that we can do is the communication aspect of making sure that families and students and staff members have the information that they need. And so when we have a positive case, that information would be communicated to the people that it directly impacts. So whether it's a building, a team, a grade level, a class, that information would be sent out accordingly. And again, all in partnership with the County Department of Public Health. So all of our guidance, the first phone call after we get those initial questionnaire type information of name, date of birth, symptoms, then that is the first phone call. So we start receiving that guidance. And then again, any of the information that we're sending out to with families or staff member, it is all going to be HIPAA compliant. It does not give away anything that can identify that staff member, that student. And just making sure that everyone feels safe and has the information that they need, whether it was someone that had a close contact or just to let them notify that, yes, there was a confirmed positive case. However, you were not identified as being in close contact with the positive individual. And again, this would be similar but different to other notifications that we do for when students have lice and other notices that we send home. We're not identifying who the student is, but we're just notifying the impacted group. So with all of this, it's hard to believe that we're already in November and we're preparing for our mid-year review. When we started this school year, this adventure that we're on, we gave families opportunities to do come back to a hybrid model potentially for in-person instruction, or to choose something like our Mountain House High School online pathway or our LVLA for the elementary schools. And so at that point in time, we were able to then decide our staffing needs to meet the needs of LVLA or distance learning and what would potentially become our hybrid program when we transition back to in-person instruction. So we split our district in two. We are now 2 mini districts within our district. And so part of the communication to families was that we would do a program evaluation mid-year. So we're just about there. So as we are doing that, we're making sure that we're first taking care of our displaced families. We had some students based off of needing to balance class sizes to maintain that class size reduction and to make sure that classes were manageable for our teachers, that we had to displace after the school year had started. So one of the things is we want to make sure that we are taking into account the impact of learning loss and what does that look like. And so one of the other negative sides of the hold harmless is that we don't have the freedom to go and hire as many staff members as we would want to give every family the program choice that they would want from this month to next month. We don't have the ability to flow that freely in between programs. However, we are starting that process. So we did start moving some students, priority with students that have IEPs, 504, or if there is a student medical condition. So the student themselves has a medical condition, we've been provided with a doctor's note, and we're able to make some of those adjustments. And our goal is to make sure that we are doing learning loss mitigation and making sure that we're maintaining our class sizes as close to 24 for our primary classes and 32 for our intermediate grades. So we want to make sure that we are preparing for that next step, because we do have families that are on the wait list to either transition to LVLA or to transition out of LVLA. And we do know that we have families in both sides of preference. The majority of our families do want hybrid in-person instruction, but we do have a smaller side of our population that would prefer that students stay in distance learning, whether it be the online pathway at the high school or LVLA for our elementary schools. So we're trying to meet the needs of both of our groups of families, while also making sure that we're being financially responsible with the resources that we have, with the constraints of hold harmless. Alrighty, does anyone have any questions for me?
Thank you. This is quite comprehensive, a lot of information that we needed. So thank you very much.
Not a question, more of a comment. Really glad to see the scenarios. I mean, like, you were part of safety committee at one point, and you know that that's the way to work through this stuff, is just play the what-if game to death. And it looks like you're doing it. Looks good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did have one tiny question. So when the kids, when their grade level goes into the hybrid and they're back and forth, are they bringing their Chromebooks back and forth? I know the older kids can handle it. I'm thinking of TK and K carrying Chromebooks back and forth.
They are maintaining possession of their Chromebook, just to make sure it's, not cross from this student touching this student's Chromebook. However, there is that coaching in the classrooms by the teachers of how do we do that? Like back in the day, which is how do you hug your library book, but now it expands to how do we make sure that we're taking care of our technology? Yes.
And they're able to do that because, they just started, so.
Yeah. No, but being in classrooms and things like that, the kids do a really good job of, giving it a hug and making sure that they're holding it on the bottom and how do they place it in their backpack. So lots of training for our littles.
Yeah.
Further questions or comments by the board? Thank you, Director Busatil. Very, very good presentation and a lot of good information. Item C, return to sports, and I'm guessing that is Associate Superintendent.
I'm on cleanup duty. There you go, Mr. Faubert.
Or you might want to close the container so it doesn't dry out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rookie move.
All right.
Welcome, Principal Faubert.
Thank you. So I have been tasked with, good evening, Board President Pombo, trustee members, Superintendent Nicholas. Thank you for having me here tonight to present a little bit about our return to sports this school year. I feel like I begin every conversation with this caveat. If we return to sports, this is what it would look like right now, right? Because the rules can change literally tomorrow about what we can and can't do. So with the information that we have today in relation to returning to sports, this is the information we have for you. The other caveat that I'd like to place on that is that the director of the California Interscholastic Federation, CIF, has set up a meeting with superintendents in just this area or the whole state? Just in this area to talk about return to sports. So there may be additional information after that meeting on the 12th of November. So again, all caveats aside, this is what we know today.
Subject to change.
Subject to change. Am I pushing the wrong button?
It's the side. It's kind of.
Got it. Okay. So I think you have something in front of you, or was sent to you like a list, like the lists of all of the actual dates and things like that. So we're not going to go through all of that. It would take too much time. It was just for your reference to know what the sports schedules are. Those are available, will be available on our athletics website. But you have that, and essentially what's been done is, because we haven't had a fall season, is we have to stop saying fall, winter, spring, and we have to say season 1 and season 2. So they've broken them up into 2 different seasons, and you'll notice
On this slide, it seems like there's a whole lot in season 2. The other thing you need to remember is that, for example, season 1, it looks like only 4 sports, but every sport that has girls and boys separate is at 2 sports in its own. So you've got football, and then you've got girls and boys cross country, girls and boys water polo, girls and boys volleyball. And then you'll see season 2, while there are some outdoor sports in both areas, most of the outdoor sports that you really can't do in the middle of the winter, like golf and tennis, when it's raining a lot outside, have been moved to season 2. The other thing you'll notice about season 2 is the golf and tennis seasons are way longer than some of the other seasons. And the reason is because they're trying to split any girls and boys apart because there's not enough room at the facilities, for example, the golf course or on the tennis courts. So the boys and girls seasons will fit within that date range, and they'll overlap in the middle for a week or 2. And so that's kind of where we are with that. So there you have it. That's what what it looks like. And this includes practice and tryout start date and all the way through the last contest of the season. I'm going to actually go questions slide by slide on this one because I'll forget. And I'll be honest with you, Lupe and Athena were supposed to be presenting this tonight, and so they're in my ear right now in case I forget anything.
Isn't that cheating?
Because we literally, no, there's no
I
cheating.
love it. It's creative.
Exactly. This is the technology high school. We just are using our resources, right? Any questions about the sports seasons?
I have a question.
Sure.
Has there been input from all the schools in the league as far as potential participation or non-participation?
There has been some discussion. Nobody said they're pulling out in our league yet, but that all depends because our league spans more than one county.
Mm-hmm.
So it will depend on what each county's numbers look like. There has been some conversation along the line. It will depend when we get closer to the beginning of December. We'll have to see what's going on between the different counties, and there has been discussion of limiting it just to schools within your county. And so it may change the whole schedule, and we might just find schools close to us, schools in Tracy, schools in Manteca, so that we're not traveling all the way to Los Banos and back. And transportation's an issue too that we'll address later. Other questions about sports seasons? All
Water
right.
polo in December.
I know.
Brr.
Right? The good thing is we have a great heater in our
Yeah.
as long as it. Okay, so facilities. This is like the big question mark, right? Like, if you only have 2 seasons, we already have a hard enough time finding space for our folks. So you'll see the different things on our campus that will need to be used. You'll also notice the names of some K-8 schools there because we will need additional space. We will not be able to host all of the practices in each season just by using. Now, the other thing you need to remember is in the red at the bottom, this just accounts for sports. If sports were the only things on our campus using the facilities, then this is how we could do it. You layer in band and drama and clubs and organizations, and you start and you know all of the things that they have to do both during school and in the evenings. Once we come back, if they're able to do those things, you layer that on, and it's more and more of our K-8 facilities to be able to manage that, because you have to realize that, like, you know, some activities are easily movable to another site, but others are not. So some things are going to take priority over others. And so we'll have to use, quite frankly, several of the other K-8 sites. And so facilities use-wise this year, as far as external facility use on our site and potentially several other K-8 sites, due to not just the high school's demands, but the demands of the K-8 schools, external facility use is going to be really rough if we go. So go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
I noticed that I didn't see any mention of cheerleading or cheer on that. Is that, where is it? What is it?
Looks like it got left off of this, but yeah, it's one of the multi-use room is another room that is used for consistently for practice for not just cheer, but other organizations as well. I know winter percussion uses it frequently. Clubs and organizations use it in the evenings frequently. So yeah, that's definitely other.
So cheer would go as normal in conjunction with the sports that.
And cheer would go in both seasons as well.
All right, thank you.
So in connection with that last slide, this is just an example of season 1. And you can see it there. I mean, I don't need to read it all out, but you can see all of the different practices, the games that are up there, and why I'm saying we're not just blowing smoke and saying we need our space. We actually need it. So other questions about facilities? So this is just the transition between season 1 and 2 because they will both overlap. In addition to sports within their own seasons overlapping, there's a lot of overlapping going on. So again, there's a lot of sharing going on. Football and track, band, the soccer, the stadium is the soccer field. We also have a grass field in the back that can be used, but using especially during season 2 where soccer and baseball and softball are at the same time, we don't know really the feasibility of having a softball game and a baseball game with soccer going on in the middle, whether that's even feasible or not. And so we're just looking at a lot of different facilities that are going to be needed. And then a lot of additional K-8 facilities for playoffs or other overlapping conditions that we find. So we don't have all of the details for season 2, but it's going to be the same. We'll need the use of K-8 sites as well. So moving on to eligibility.
Before we move
Go ahead. Yeah.
from facilities,
Yeah.
being on the facilities committee, so your puzzle masters at your site to put all of this together will be communicating with staff. So
Yeah.
you won't have to wait for things to come to the facilities committee to say, no, I'm sorry, the high school's using that. Because
No,
there'll
yeah,
be little availability.
Generously enough, you decided to allow us to have a full-time athletic director this year. And a lot of people think, oh, well, he must be doing nothing right now. The man is like
Oh, I can't
hair
even.
on fire right now.
Yeah.
Because every 2 days something changes
Yeah.
and everything has to be shifted. And like you said, we have to have our ducks in a row the moment it starts
Yeah.
so that all of those civic permits can be input into the system so that it populates and we're not lying to our community or to anyone else to make sure that the facilities are appropriately used.
I appreciate being proactive and stating it here, so the community has heard for the first time this is going to affect the Civics Center
Yeah,
Act applications.
for sure. And again, it's not just us. We have the high school that is going to get booked to the max in addition to elementary school sites, and we'll be stepping on their toes because they have their own stuff too.
Yeah.
Right? The high school isn't the only priority. So we really need to work closely with our K-8 sites and be nice to them so that we're not stepping on toes.
Yeah.
Have you considered, for example, for baseball or softball, using the little league fields or whatever as well?
So, yeah, so we do have actually alternate fields now.
Okay,
So we have at Cordis is the new JV baseball field.
right.
So that's positive. And the softball field, I believe, is at Hanson.
Okay,
So we do have alternate fields. It'll depend on how many players we have come out. My guess is going to be after all of this, kids are going to be looking for something to do.
Yeah.
And whether they've played a sport or not before, and I'll tell you right now, basketball conditioning is happening right now, and we're having to find places to put them. I mean, last night, this morning I was asked, hey, do you think we could start using one of the K-8s now because the boys' basketball conditioning is getting too big for our gym. So, yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah. We definitely are looking at that.
thank you.
Okay, eligibility. So eligibility is typically a big deal in high school sports. You're a student before you're an athlete. I think one of the things that COVID has brought us is kind of a grace period for some of our students who traditionally have not performed well. Number one, in the fact that they were given credit, CR, on their report cards, which essentially doesn't impact their GPA. And the second part of that is part of the legislation that went through basically said you're not harming kids. You give them a pass until you have a grading period. So what we've done is this coming quarter report card, which is actually due this coming week, will be used for initial eligibility for students in December. And then at the end of December, when the semester ends, it typically isn't that close together, but that is our next eligibility date for the start of the season. So none of the contests will actually start until after winter break. So we will have, we'll have some kids not eligible initially, but we're going to be really kind to those students and say, you kind of have a pass for now. You really need to get your grades up. Let's let you go ahead and practice and try out. Encourage those kids to do a good job so that they can be participating when we return in January. And the other thing is CIF and our member schools in our league have really come back on it's sometimes really hard for kids to play more than one sport in a season just because of the amount of time that it takes. But again, kids are looking for something active to do. And we're allowing up to 3 sports in a season, which is unheard of, but there is still a CIF rule that they can only participate in 18 hours of sports a week. And then the other thing, on a daily basis, you can only participate 4 hours a day. And if there's a contest that day, the contest is an automatic 3 hours. So they can only practice an additional hour after that. But you'll see at the bottom, the coaches, we've already talked to them all, and they're all in agreement. Like, we get it. We're going to do everything that we can. I'll tell you right now, both of my high school students are going to want to play more than one sport in each season. So it's good news for all of the kids. They're just itching for something to do. So when we return, eligibility is going to be consistent and needed, but we're going to pull back a little bit to give the most amount of kids.
What a great positive incentive. We'll get you out of the house, get your grades up.
Get your grades up and you can be out of the house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Transportation. As of right now, the current restrictions will not allow us to have enough kids in a vehicle to make it financially feasible for us to transport the whole football team, for example. And so right now we will be asking parents and guardians to provide transportation for their student athlete to all sporting events. And until health guidelines loosen and we're able to provide district vans or rent buses. In case you're wondering, this is not out of the norm. Many districts, my very first school district in San Jose, Eastside Unified, huge high school district in the South Bay, no transportation. You basically told your student athletes, the game's at Silver Creek High School, we'll see you there. And they got themselves there. So, I mean, even in more affluent districts, when I was in Pleasanton, transportation was not part of the package. The district did not support it. Parents would, on specific teams, fundraise to purchase buses for those away contests, but for the most part, transportation wasn't provided, and it's not a guarantee. We tell kids to get there, and that's what we're going to have to do. Otherwise, we would literally be, we already spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on transportation for sports each year, and we'd have to spend hundreds of thousands more just to make it work. So we will be asking for parents to provide transportation.
Do we know if, and this is probably not a question for you, Ben, do we know if there is a liability on the district's part if a parent says, oh, I'll take your kid also to the game, and somebody's exposed to something? We might not have an answer right now.
Go ahead. It's a district by district process.
Yeah, and we would have to check with legal, but traditionally, if parent to parent, they set up transportation in my previous district, that's how they got to all events. And parents would set up carpools before COVID, and that's at their risk going to the event. The attorneys in my previous district, and I think our attorney, once we consult them, I think they would agree with that. It's not our risk.
It would be handled the same way as worrying about an automobile accident.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how about students driving themselves and driving friends?
Yeah.
That's something that we would have to check with legal about, and I think that would be a parent conversation with the kids, that we would have to make sure that they are behaving appropriately. Because, you know, at a certain age, you can't have kids in your car anyway until I think you're 18, I think it is. So,
Thank you.
Questions about transportation? So we're still following the safety recommendations provided by our county public health department. They have not updated their guidance since the beginning of the summer. So we're going on kids aren't touching any gear that they have not, so like if they come to practice, they literally get assigned a ball, and that is their ball for the entire practice. They can't pass it to another person. They can't touch it if another person has touched it. We're actually looking for updated guidance because they're ready to start doing a little bit more than that, albeit not ready until the public health officials are ready, but definitely ready for it. And we're going to pledge to make sure that we follow those guidelines on a consistent basis. We're not going to go outside of those guidelines. We're not going to push those guidelines. We're going to follow them the way they are. So right now, kids who come to conditioning get asked the same questions. You get asked if you walk into a doctor's office, you know, any fever, any contact with somebody with COVID, et cetera, that gets logged into a spreadsheet. The kids come in. We're avoiding contact even with the gear that they use, et cetera. So nothing is different with that right now.
Clearly, there would have to be some updated guidelines before actual sports could begin.
That's what we're hoping for.
You can't play basketball where each kid gets their own ball.
It's interesting because we know, I have personal knowledge of AAU organizations who have already started competitions, especially in the Sacramento area, where teams are going up and competing in these things, and you see kids with their masks around their chins while they're playing. And
Yeah.
Okay.
Are they wearing masks right now in conditioning?
They're not wearing masks. Well, they don't. It's not a requirement. They are in pods, so they get assigned to a pod, and they only work with that group of students. And coaches, the direction now is a coach can go from one pod to another. That was one updated piece of guidance under certain conditions, but for the most part, they're in these little pods. If you see them out on the field even, you'll see that when they come drop their gear, they're assigned an area to drop their gear. So when they take a break, that's the area they go to. The band is doing the same thing. If you see them out there, you'll see them in little pods all over campus, really. So
I know the students are ready for it to change, but from the call that I had today, it sure sounds like the numbers are going in the wrong direction.
yeah, I know.
So
Yeah.
We do have a formal request to Maggie Park through the county soups meetings I attend to update this and get us some clarification.
Matt asked about the students wearing masks. Are coaches and staff wearing
Yes.
masks?
Coaches and staff wear masks, and they have electronic whistles, so they're not blowing and spreading. So we purchased a bunch of, that's to go on my list.
Didn't even think of that.
I didn't even think of that. But we purchased, those suckers are expensive.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's what's going on. And I think that was the last one.
I feel really bad for our kids.
Mm-hmm.
This is awful.
Yeah, it is. But
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
Thank you very much.
very happy to see that the high school is taking this seriously and looking at all, as Trustee Balzerini mentioned earlier, looking at scenarios and what happens if this happens, what happens if that happens, those sorts of things, because I would really love to see our kids back in the classroom, but also back on the ball fields or swimming pool or whatever it is that they choose to participate in, because this is just, it's not good for kids to be cooped up and not out in the fresh air and enjoying each other and activities. Further questions or comments by the board? Moving on to item 12, calendar. Wednesday, November 11th is Veterans Day. District facilities are closed. Wednesday, November 18th is the next governing, wait a minute. Oh, this is the special virtual governing board meeting. It's a special meeting that I believe is, correct me if I'm wrong about it.
I do a resolution tied to bonds.
Just a one-item special. All right. Monday through Friday, November 23rd through 27th is fall break. District facilities will be closed. Wednesday, December 9th is the virtual wellness committee meeting at 3:30. Wednesday, December 16th is the next governing board meeting. Wednesday, December 16th is also the next virtual safety committee meeting. Thursday, December 17th is the next virtual facilities committee, which Trustee Clemens mentioned earlier. He'd like to have consensus from the committee members as far as holding it virtually or in person. In a moment, we will adjourn to closed session where we will discuss public employee discipline dismissal, release complaint, Government Code 54957, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9B, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Section Paragraph 2 or 3, Subdivision D, one case. Conference with real property negotiators, Government Code 54956.8, property at 397 East Ramsey Drive, Mountain House, California. Agency negotiator, Superintendent Nicholas. Negotiating parties, Mountain House developers, Camilos, Trimark, and Shea Homes. Under negotiations, price, terms of payment, or both. Student discipline or other confidential matters, Education Code Sections 35146, 48900, and 48912B. Pupil Personnel Education Code 48918, Student Expulsion Number 20-21-01, Student Expulsion 2021-02. Consider approval of leave of absence for certificated employee number 129797 from 11/10/2020 to 2/28/2021. Do I have a motion?
Move to adjourn to closed session.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We are now adjourned to closed session. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.